brother. Good to see you all. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you being here, and I'm pleased to be here. Thanks for the invite from Durbin, and thank you all for showing up. So we are going to talk about the cost of doing business, and this talk is partially, we'll talk about actually how you track your costs. It's very practical. I've tried to keep it extremely practical based on things that I've learned over the last decade or so in roles that I've had in companies similar to yours, and also in my peer groups that Durbin mentioned that I run now. So here's the agenda for the next 40 or 50 minutes. Number one, we're going to talk about why to track your costs. Why do you want to track your costs in the first place? Number two, we're going to talk about how to track your costs. We'll talk about some very practical things that I've learned, and I'll share resources with you, everything that I can do to help. I've tried to pack it into a couple of very simple ideas that you can take away and go and implement right after this. Number three, toward the end, we'll talk about the hidden cost, what I call the hidden cost of doing business. And then fourth and final, we're talking about all these costs. We'll also talk about the reward that comes with it. So the only deal is that I'm the speaker, sure, but you guys are the audience. This is not a solo mission on my part. This is going to take all of us. And so throughout this talk, the talk is called The Cost of Doing Business. I'm going to ask, or I'm going to say, that's just the, and you all know the phrase, your job is to say, cost of doing business, okay? So I'll say, that's just the, and I'll kind of indicate to you, and then you'll say, cost of doing business. The deal is, please give me some energy and enthusiasm. Let's give it a practice run. That's just the
cost of doing business.
Exactly. Beautiful. Hey, very nice. Very well done. So, first things first, I'm going to tell you a quick story. I know you want to get into the actual nitty-gritty, and I promise you, it's like the monkey said whenever he got his tail cut off in the lawnmower, it won't be long now. But first, the story. That joke goes over some people's heads. It's fun. The first 10 years ago, I was working at a landscaping company. We did landscape installs. We put in irrigation pipe. We did sod and trees and plants and retaining walls and paver patios and that whole bit. And I had started at 17 years old. When I first started working there, I told the boss, he was about maybe 10 years my senior, and I told him, look, I'm happy to come and work for you. I'll work as hard as I can, but I really want a shot at helping you grow the business. I like the business side of things, and so I want to help there. He said, Roger that. So I started working. We get a few years in, and I was a second employee, and then after a couple of years, I was able to kind of really help run the place. We had 6 or 8 employees, multiple crews, multiple trucks, trailers, that whole thing. And one day, the boss got engaged, and then a couple months later, he was about to get married, and he had bought this brand new Dodge pickup. This is not the actual pickup, but give you the idea. Any Dodge, or I guess Ram companies? Raise your hand if you're a Ram company. Ooh, just one. You should get a gold star. So he buys this new Ram, and he tells me before he goes on his honeymoon, he says, I bought the truck. I'm going to be gone for 5 weeks. I'm going to Europe. It's going to be amazing. I bought the truck, and I put it in my garage. I don't want any of the guys driving it. You can drive it if you need to. I know you only run a half-ton. You could drive it if you absolutely have to, but I don't want guys driving my new truck. He had got it lifted. It was very similar to this, actually. Lifted, big wheels, headache rack, the whole thing. I said, Roger that. Gets married, goes away. He's got his cell phone on airplane mode, and I'm running the house. And we make it about 2 weeks, and then I get a phone call from one of our builders. Hey, we got this issue. We're trying to get a final inspection on this house. We need the backyard graded. Can you come out and do it? All my guys are slammed. It's the middle of summer, and so I saw this as my cue. Absolutely. So I go over to his house, grab the truck. I drive out to the shop. We have one dump trailer and an excavator at the shop. So I hook up the trailer, And I get the excavator about halfway up the ramps, and I just barely start tipping the back of it into the back of the trailer when the trailer pops off the hitch and drives directly through the backup camera of his brand new Cummins pickup. You can imagine my chagrin as I realized what had happened after I fell 18 inches on the seat of the excavator. I was a little stunned, and this great wave of shame washed over me as I realized what I'd done. I took pictures. I spent about an hour using blocks and pallets and all this dangerous stuff to try to get the trailer extracted from the back of the truck. I finally got it done, and then I spent the rest of the afternoon writing the email to the boss explaining what had happened. I don't know if it was because he was on his honeymoon or because he was a good dude. He just responded back, "Go get it fixed, no worries." But the point is, one, employees just break stuff, right? That's just the cost of doing business. But the point is that I was ignorant. I used too small of a ball on the trailer hitch, and it caused this entire downstream effect. People like to say that ignorance is bliss, and I disagree with that. Ignorance is not bliss, but ignorance is a solvable issue. Ignorance is something you can fix. And so my hope is that as we go through this stuff today, some of what I have to say and share might be useful to some of you. Roger that? So, part number one, why track your costs? Why track your costs in the first place? When I first started landscaping, I already mentioned this, as I was, the first several years, it was, our motto was just work. We just worked a lot. We worked a lot of hours and we worked hard, and we made money because we were just coming out of the recession. We had zero overhead. We had used equipment, used trucks. We just sprinted. We would work out of town sometimes. We'd drive 2-3 hours out of town. We'd go work in some development, and we'd work 14-hour days, go home, get some Mexican food, and then wake up the next morning and do the same thing again. And so that was our advantage, is that we worked hard. And my first lesson in actually costing was a few years in, when we had at first, we didn't do anything for Christmas, and then we had a Christmas party. Like 2 years in, we had 6 or 8 guys, and the boss told us, "Hey, come on out to a Christmas party. We're going to go to this new place called Ruth's Chris." And I didn't know this when I was preparing this talk, but there's actually Ruth's Chris right here in the casino. And if you're looking for me around 7 o'clock tonight, I'll be downing a filet. So come and join me. We go to Ruth's Chris. It was incredible. I didn't know something like this existed. I grew up with very little. We never went to Ruth's Chris. We thought Subway was awesome. And so we go to Ruth's Chris. It's amazing. And I get the filet, and then we get some creme brulee, and then the boss says a few kind words. And then he did something he'd never done before, and that is he handed us a check. He handed us each an envelope with a check in it. And I sort of nonchalantly sauntered to my truck and then immediately opened the check to see what was in it. I wanted to see. And so it turns out it was a couple grand, which at the time was an incredible amount of money for me, in that it was a fair fraction of what I made every year. And it blew my mind. I was pumped. And so were the rest of the guys. They were just stoked. So we go back to work the next day, and we work the next year. We have another Christmas party. Back to Ruth's Chris again. Same deal. I get the filet, I get the creme brulee, and then the boss says a few kind words and gives us another check. And this time I kind of knew what to expect, so I didn't just saunter, I sort of more ran to my truck, and I opened the check, and it was over twice the size of the one of the year before. And I was floored, I was stoked. Next day, we wake up, we did it all again for another year. We go back to the same Ruth's Chris, again, 3 years in a row. Get the filet. This time I got it medium rare, which I still don't, to this day, I don't recommend. There's probably some medium rare people in this room, but it's like, It's a bit much. Slap a couple Band-Aids on that thing, it's back out mooing again. Not my speed. But I got a medium rare, and it was still delicious. I got some creme brulee. The boss said a few kind words, and then we went home. Empty-handed. The next morning, I made it to the shop early. A couple guys were there loading up. And the boss wasn't there. And you can imagine what might have happened. I had guys threatening to quit on the spot because there was no Christmas bonus. They had this new expectation that at Christmas we get bonuses, and there was no Christmas bonus. And you might say, well, employees shouldn't expect that, you know? Why was there no bonus? Any guesses? We didn't make any money. We didn't make any money. We had grown. We took on new projects. We took on more complicated projects. We bought new equipment. We had new guys, inexperienced guys that weren't good at maybe doing the work, or guys that weren't good at managing the projects. The boss and myself were running around like chickens with our head cut off for 100 hours a week, and we got to the end of all of that, and we hadn't made any money. And you might say, well, some years are good and some years are bad, right? That's just the cost of doing business. Today, we're going to talk about one number on this P&L sheet. Each of you has a P&L sheet that looks something like this. We're going to talk about not revenue, not the total revenue number, because Luke will talk about that in a little bit as far as marketing and getting more customers. We're not even going to talk about the bottom half of this where we focus on overhead and how to make more money appear there. We're going to talk about one number, the cost of goods sold, your COGS. Okay? So, the first question I want to answer is what you get. Why is this worth tracking your costs? Why is it worth the effort? Because some of the things that we go through, I'm going to share with you, it's going to take work. Absolute work. And some of you are probably further ahead on this journey. Maybe some are a little behind. It's going to take work to do this. The reason to do this is not to explain to the IRS why you had to buy a new motorhome, although follow me for more tips. What you want from all of this, what you will get from all of this, is confidence. When you track your costs and when you know, not when you feel like you're making money or when you think you're making money, but when you know you're making money, you get confidence. You get confidence in the bid room or when you're estimating projects. You get confidence when you go sell the projects, when you're dealing with homeowners and you're talking to them. You know for a fact you can't do this for less than this number. That's what you know. And you get a tremendous amount of confidence from knowing. So that's my argument for why you should track your costs in the first place. So part 2A. Part 2 has two parts, A and B. We'll go through part A first, which is how do you track your costs? This is very, very practical. Please feel free to take pictures of any of this stuff if it is useful to you. Let's rock and roll. I've tried to boil this down into the most simple process I can imagine. This is a 3-step process for how you would begin to track your costs. Let's say you don't track anything right now. You just work, much like I kind of laid out the example that I gave from my own experience. And if that's the case, you are normal. Welcome. But this is how you would begin to track your costs. First and foremost, we'll talk about implementing daily field logs. I'll make recommendations. I'll kind of show you how I've done that a few times and helped other companies do it. Then we'll talk about collecting all the data, how you do that, and then reviewing and debriefing. Step number 1, implement daily field logs. I'm curious, by show of hands, who here, please be honest with me, who here runs a daily field log in your field? All crews, all people fill out a daily field log. Raise your hand. Roger that. Okay, this might be useful for you. What you are looking to collect in the daily field log is maybe 5, maybe 4, maybe even 3. And when I began tracking, I was tracking 2 numbers, the total man hours and the material. I would recommend today, if I was going to go start again, 3 things: man hours, material, and equipment hours. How much are you running your equipment? You track all this in one place. You have the guys track it, you track it yourself, and you begin to build this backlog of information or data. Consistency is better than intensity. And the reason I'm bringing this up right now is because a lot of times guys will get real excited. Folks will get excited about, yeah, we're going to start tracking our costs. We're going to start doing all this stuff. And then you get busy. You got a bunch of stuff going on. Somebody leaves, somebody goes out of town, you go out of town, and then everything falls to pieces. I would encourage you to be consistent, remain consistent with this, and just chip away. So you're going to collect all this data, those 5 numbers, 4 numbers, even 4 or 3 numbers into one location. And I have made a few suggestions here. These are not companies that pay me for saying this. This is just some suggestions. On the far your left, there's the simple, and then there's more robust / complicated. And when I started, I started with a literal piece of paper and a pen in my truck in my center console. And I tracked every single day what are our man hour, total man hours on the project, and what are our materials. After that, I built the Google form. It took me 15 minutes. It fed into a Google Sheet. The Google Sheet then collected all the information, put it into one location, and away we go. By a show of hands, do you see your software on this screen? These are just softwares that I've used. Raise your hand if you've seen if you use this software on the screen. Okay, some of you. Okay. I'm not here to tell you need to use one of these or the other. I'm saying you should use the software. You should use a system of some sort, even if it's paper and pen, to track your costs closely. My encouragement here is to keep it simple. Again, it's so easy to overcomplicate this stuff. And you go talk to software salesmen, people who work at Jobber and House Call Pro and Service Titan, and they will sell you the world. They will tell you that it's amazing, that it's going to change your life. And here's 10 other people that it's changed their life on. But what they don't tell you is that it's going to take hours and hours and hours of work. It's going to take a ton of effort on your part to turn that into something that's valuable for you tomorrow. And so I would encourage you to keep it simple as you grow and implement this. Now, what you're doing when you're collecting this stuff and you're kind of putting in this one location, what you're doing is you're collecting data. Data is the thing that's coming in. And the reason I wanted to put this slide up here and share this with you is because I found it useful to think about data as data is just numbers. It's black and white. But when it gets into this system, when it gets into one location, and you can look at it as an owner, as someone with intuition, someone with experience, and you can turn this into information. That data isn't black and white anymore. It becomes more gray. The information helps you make better decisions. And that's the point of doing all of this, is that as you track and you see, here's how long it takes us to put in this kind of tank, or here's how long it takes us to do this sand mound, or bring in these loads of sand or gravel. Like, as you start to understand that stuff and see that consistently, you will be able to make better decisions on how you schedule crews, who you put on different kinds of projects, and all of those things. So this is where data turns into information, is right at this point. So I'm a millennial. I'm proud to say, in 50 slides or whatever, this is the only AI picture that I have in the slide deck. Choose the system and use the system. Whatever you choose, whether it's a piece of paper and a pen, it's Google Sheets and a Google form, or it's House Call Pro or Service Titan, choose the system and use the system. Again, I have seen it again and again where somebody buys the system. They buy a software that's going to solve their problems. They pay for 100% of it, and they use 10% of it. And I would encourage you, as you buy these things and you you start to put them in place, don't lose steam. Don't lose steam. Put it to work for you. And remember, we don't do this because it's easy, but because we thought it would be easy. This is the third and final step. Remember I said 3 steps. Third and final step is to review and debrief every week. And if I had to think about, or as I was thinking about, what were some of the key things that we did that helped make us the most money, it's that we took this information and we made better decisions week after week after week because we didn't lose this. So I would encourage you find a day and a time that works for you. Fridays at 10 a.m., that's when I would review what happened this last week. So Fridays at 10, review everything. If I was out on Friday, I'd do it Thursday night. But I took it seriously. I would encourage you to take it seriously. This is your business, this is your livelihood. Review. What are your trucks doing? What are your guys doing? What are your customers saying? And debrief every week. These are the 3 questions that I would ask during this debrief. You could do it yourself, you could do it with your foreman, or you could have people in the room, you could do it with the whole company for all I care. But as you debrief, even if it takes you 15 minutes, debrief by asking these 3 questions. What should we start doing? What should we stop doing? What should we continue doing? Simple start, stop, and continue. Every time, those answers will be different. Every week, those answers will be a little different. And part of the value of this is you will be able to see where you might be hiding or where you might be kidding yourself. Because you're able to see the information, what's actually happening, what actually happened this last week, and you can make better decisions for next week. So, start, stop, and continue. As a reminder, consistency beats intensity every day of the week. So, part 2B, part 2B, 3 common roadblocks. First common roadblock for this is we already do all of this. And if that is the case, then forgive me for wasting your time. I'll be out of your hair shortly. Second common roadblock is I don't even know where to start. And I hope that me sharing some of this stuff is useful for you to know, here's how you can start. Here's how you can begin. And the third and most common is I'm too busy. I'm too busy to do this right now. And I would argue with all the love and respect that I can muster for you, if you're too busy to find out if you're making money or not, you just hate to be on the other side of that and find out later after it's too late. Just begin. Begin. I see, I call this a pendulum, perhaps it's a gauge. I don't know that it much matters, but I see a trend, which is that people tend to bounce from one side of this pendulum to the other, and they hit their head and then they bounce back. On the one side, we track nothing ever. We don't track anything. And then the other side is we track everything always. And how do I know, when my guy's in the outhouse, is he supposed to be tracking his time or not? You think I'm joking? Those are real questions I've had. I would find a medium ground, a middle ground, where you track what's useful. Track the things that are interesting or useful for you, again, to help inform your decisions for next time. This is a saying that I have just loved, and I think about this a lot. It's that complex fails, simple scales. And a lot of you, I think, will appreciate this, and where I'm coming from when I say this, that there's enough complexity as it is in the world. We don't need to add more complexity for no reason. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. There's a very simple algorithm that I love from this guy named Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is a massive hedge fund manager. It doesn't much matter. The point is he has this very simple algorithm, and I'll tell you the answer to the algorithm in a second. But the algorithm is pain plus reflection. Pain plus reflection. And I wanted to pause here because the pain is inevitable. Losing money is inevitable on some projects. Having guys screw stuff up is inevitable. We all go through pain. We all have problems. But reflection or thinking back, considering, finding new avenues. Reflection is not mandatory. It's optional. It's something you can choose to do. And pain plus reflection equals progress. Equals progress, not success, not perfection. I don't much care about that. It kind of drives me nuts when people talk about being successful, being not successful. I prefer progress. Progress is a beautiful thing, better than yesterday. So pain plus reflection equals progress, and that's what this whole debriefing will do for you every week. I told you we'd talk about the hidden cost of doing business, and this starts in St. George, Utah. Anybody ever been to St. George, Utah? Raise your hand. Go try it out one time. It's a nice little spot. 14 months ago, I was in St. George, Utah, staying at this hotel. My wife and I, we went, our 10th anniversary was just over a year ago. And we went to St. George, Utah, and we spent a few days hiking. It was incredible. It was an awesome time. And I woke up the second to last morning we were there, and I just couldn't quite see straight. And I kind of climbed out of bed, and I had to stumble to the bathroom and stumbled back to bed. And my wife's up at this time, and she's like, what's the deal? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm fine. And I tried to Google, what is wrong with me? Why can't I see straight? And there was just 50 unintelligible characters jammed on the screen. And she's like, you're not good. Like, we need to go. We need to go in. And so we fumbled down to my truck and drove out to the hospital, got checked in at about 7 o'clock in the morning on Halloween of 2023, and I spent the day in MRI machines. And it turns out, little known fact, I didn't know this at the time, turns out dogs can't have MRIs, but cats can. So I spent the day in MRI machines, and then Dr. Tate came in the room, and he said, we need to confirm this, but the early signs are that you had a stroke last night. A stroke? I'm 29 years old, man. I'm on a run streak where I've run every day for 3 years. I have a wife and 6 kids. I can't be having a stroke. Come on, somebody else. Turns out he was right. I had a stroke 14 months ago, and they showed me a brain scan. They showed they showed my brain. There's a little white spot where my smarts used to be. And now you get this. But I had a stroke. And I wish I could tell you that everything got better after that. But we flew home, and 10 days later, I took this picture when the ambulance loaded my wife to bring her down to a children's hospital. What had happened is she was 23 weeks pregnant, and she went for a run. She was bleeding a bit, and she was like, hey, let's go to a hospital. Let's go urgent care and get this checked out. We go in, and it turns out she was dilated to a 4 at 23 weeks, and our baby was on the way. They pumped her full of magnesium. She got all puffy. They laid her flat, actually with her head down, and shipped her to an even bigger children's hospital in Portland, Oregon, where we spent the next 3 weeks hoping and praying baby wouldn't come. In fact, I remember the second day we got there when everything was, when it was at its height, we were freaked out. The doctor came in and he pulled up his chair and he talked for 45 minutes about the risks of having a 23-week baby and how at 23 weeks, your baby has a 20% chance of living. Your baby has a 20% chance of living a healthy life. But, he said, if you can make it to 26 weeks, babies have an 80% chance. So the odds flip. And I'm like telling my wife, like, don't sneeze. 26 weeks, 2 days, our 7th child, Stina, was born last December. 1 pound, 13 ounces. Absolute miracle. Absolute miracle that she was even alive. We spent the next 3 months in the hospital, 97 days actually. She had her ups and downs, and then we got to bring her home on March 7th of this last year. And about 40 people came over and they brought these balloons and gifts and dinner and congratulated her on coming home. The reason I'm telling you all this in a presentation about costing is because life is hard. You've all had experiences. I know I'm not alone. We've all had painful experiences. And if you're a boss and you own the place, you have employees that have painful experiences in their life. Life is hard. And it's even harder when you're not making money. I think the reason for doing all of this costing stuff, a good enough reason to start doing it is because life is hard and there's going to be a lot of issues and challenges that you are going to have to overcome. And to be able to be there for others is the whole story, man. It's the whole thing. Number 4 is the reward of doing business. I told you the story about our baby, and during that period, I had a stroke. 10 days later, we go into the hospital. We lived in the hospital for almost 4 months. I didn't work a day that whole time. I was cooked. I could barely string 3 sentences together. We had, sisters and brothers and whatever staying with our other kids. And people just rallied around us to help. It's extremely humbling to be on that side of the story. And I almost didn't bring this next part up, or I didn't want to share with you guys because it's very humbling. But one day, after Stina was born, I went to the hospital, or I went home from the hospital. I drove home and helping with the kids and stuff, and I went and checked the mail. And in the mail was a card from a family friend, and I opened it, and 2 things hit the floor at the same time. The check and my jaw. Because this family friend had written us this monstrous check to help us in this rough period of life. An enormous amount of money. I told you about the Christmas bonus. Should have been there. And this friend happens to be a business owner. Happens to lead people. He's actually in the construction business. And to be able to write a massive check to somebody in need, someone who hadn't worked in 4 months, someone who was trying to get their brain back, is reason enough. It's reason enough to try to have a good business, man. Making money is for others. This is my friend Alex Judd. He runs a company, a coaching company. And this last September, I went to Colorado Springs to one of his events, and a bunch of us hiked Pikes Peak in Colorado Springs. Beautiful, unbelievable experience. It was amazing. And this is us halfway up the hike. It's about a 13-mile hike. You climb from 7,000 feet to just over 14,000 feet. Only guy I've ever seen to bring chips and salsa on a hike. I didn't even realize that was a thing. I had no idea. Turns out it's pretty good. But the reason I'm telling you about Alex is because Alex and their company and their team, they have this saying that I think fits perfectly in closing, is that strength is for service. Your strength or your financial strength as a business, your ability to know your costs, your ability to help people is for service. It's for others. Of course there's going to be benefits to you, of course. But ultimately it's for others. So that's my encouragement to you, is do it well. And remember that strength is for service. And if you'd like to connect with me, take a picture of this and hit me up on LinkedIn. Thank you all.